Special school board meeting to order. It is Thursday, February 22nd. If we could all please stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Who messed that up? What's the next word?
I think we should also include the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah, let's go. That was in the criteria today that we're reviewing. So the students will learn that.
This is our social studies adoption.
I think that was in the first grade curriculum, Mark. Let's go back and look at that. Yeah. All right. So pretty easy agenda today. Topic 1, 3.01 public hearing. Superintendent?
We'll invite our fabulous team here to provide the information.
Good morning, Vice Chair, Superintendent, board members. First, I wanted to start just by thanking you for taking the time to schedule this special meeting. The purpose of our time this morning is for us to bring forth the committee recommendations for the adoption of high-quality instructional materials in social studies. I'm Lainey Obando, the Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and proudly joined by Kelly Dodd. Kelly is our Manager of Instructional Materials and Media Services. All right, so as we began our journey into the adoption process, in November, we really anchored this task in identifying the state-approved materials which would best align to the mission and vision of Lake County Schools. It really is about finding the right fit for our district based upon the materials that had already received approval at the state level. So our first step was establishing a committee for each level representative of teachers, district staff across departments, and new this year, we also had parent representatives. So our CIA committee members are listed here. This group put in a tremendous amount of time just in preparing materials, preparing meetings, seeking input and feedback, and welcoming community members. This year, we also were required to have all of our meetings open, public noticed, and open to the public for community members to participate. And this group really led the charge to be able to be really transparent in the process and invite our community in as part of the group. So for elementary committee members, you see them listed there. All schools had the opportunity to be represented by a committee member. And we had almost all of our elementary schools represented. If they did not have a representative, however, the school vote was still offered to the school. So that information on which options were available was still brought to the school. They did have resources and materials at the school, and all of the teachers did have the opportunity to provide feedback to the group. So you'll see in here a lot of school representatives. You'll also see some of our district curriculum representatives and district department reps. It's important that we have representation from regional teams, from ESE, ELL, so we were proud to have a really good cross-section of representation here. And our secondary committee members, and I did forget, I'm sorry, I'm going to scoot back one. You'll also notice our parent representative as well listed. For secondary committee members, we have our middle school and high school reps. Again, also some district representation at both the middle and high school level, as well as our parent member who represented secondary as a whole. And Advanced placement, that group was led, that falls under Student Services or Student Support Services Department and Francis Sellis's team. And it was led by Kathleen Daniels, the administrative coordinator for that department. And they went through a very similar parallel process for the adoption of the advanced placement materials. So this is a representation of the committee members for advanced placement. And you'll also see the parent representative and the ESE program specialist. And these were timely commitments, so I do want to just acknowledge and thank the committee members who really, when I tell you that they dug into the materials and they took their role very seriously for their school and for the district, I can't say that enough. They really were so genuine. They asked such great questions. When you'll see the rubric in a few minutes, and it's intense or intensive, but they worked so hard to ensure that we were going to find the best fit for students in Lake County. And so we thank them for their time. We thank them for representing at the district level, and then also being the leaders to bring the information back to their schools and be able to just support the adoption process overall. So we'll start with a little overview of elementary as we bring the recommendation to you, and I'm going to turn that over to Kelly to provide an overview of the elementary adoption recommendation and a little bit about the process.
Absolutely. So the first thing we did is we took a look at the rubric. We started with the state rubric, and keeping in mind that we wanted just the right fit for Lake County, knowing that we integrate strongly with our ELA curriculum when it comes to social studies and ELA. And as we spent some time developing our rubric, we also spent an entire session with our committee reviewing that rubric and helping them feel familiar and comfortable with that rubric. This is the different components. We start with content, and then we went and we have teacher support, which was very important to our teachers and our staff on campuses, followed by instruction, also assessment materials, addressing the needs of all learners, including ELL and ESE learners, format and organization, and then community resources. So those were our 7 components that we took into account when we were reviewing those materials. We reviewed 2 materials for elementary, the Gallopade and the teachers TCI materials, Teacher Curriculum Institute. There were 2 different ways that those materials that our committee voted for those materials. First, the committee members themselves had a vote, but they also had a school vote. When the committee went back to their school locations, they had the materials there at the school campuses, and they had a QR code where the teachers were able to submit feedback to the schools. The committee representatives looked over that feedback, and that helped them make an informed school vote on behalf of their school. So the school vote, when it came to those 2 materials, was in favor of Gallopade by 40.7%. The committee member vote was also in favor of Gallopade by 55.6%.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What does that mean? I go back one.
Okay.
I do not represent a school. Nope.
Oh,
Forward.
sorry. Forward. You meant
Just
go
one
back to
click.
a couple of clicks.
What is
Yeah.
I do not represent a school?
So we do have the parent. We had the parents.
parent?
Yes. And we have some other district staff that did not represent a school, like people representing ELL and ESE departments district-wide.
So what did they vote for?
They voted in the committee member vote. They didn't vote in the school
No,
vote.
I mean, what curriculum material? Would
So-
they have been a part of the,
They were a part of the vote as well.
so they're part of the committee member vote?
Yes.
Got
yeah.
it. Thank you. for
And those are great questions. And the total vote were the combined
Got it.
school and committee member votes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Back to me so quickly. So just to anchor some of this process, we did utilize a reference point from the state adoption process, and that included the alignment. The state adoption process obviously occurs prior to our district adoption, and 2 anchor points that really served us in this adoption and committee review would be the subject-specific standards score that was received during the state or earned by each publisher during the state review and the percentage of alignment. And that's for obvious reasons. We want to make sure that as we're considering materials that we are looking for a high level of alignment. With high levels of alignment, we tend to have to supplement less and we can focus more on the core. So the subject-specific standard score is based on the content area ratings that the state reviewers complete, and that is on a scale from 1 to 5. So you can see here that Gallipade scored over 4.0 on all of the subject-specific standards scores across K through 5, and the percentage of alignment overall within standards was at 84.5% or above. And again, there's two parts to this process. While there are state reviewers, there's typically 3, and then a Universal Design for Learning review. And then we, of course, have our district review. And our team looks for alignment as well. So while we take the consideration of the percentage of alignment from what the state has provided and recommended in the overall state review and the experts that have reviewed on that level, it's also really important to us that our teachers look at it and do a thorough job of saying, okay, here's I know the blueprints, I know the curriculum, the standards, I want to make sure that the alignment is represented here as well. But this does serve as an anchor for us. So within the Gallipade curriculum components, we wanted to just provide some information as to what will be included in the adoption. We'll obviously have the student editions with print and digital access, teacher's edition, print and digital, a tools binder, some curated content. There's an online platform with full digital course information, teaching tools and multimedia resources. There's a grading and reporting module and a pre-built assessment and item bank that will all be included as part of the adoption. So obviously with that many resources at hand, we have a lot of things to consider as supports for our teachers, and if adopted, we would need to just make sure that the teachers have the necessary supports and professional learning to be able to make all of these pieces come to life in the classroom.
So this is not a magazine sort of style that we've seen in the past for elementary.
It is not.
All right. Is it consumable?
It is consumable. We have some samples of it if you would like to see.
Yes, good point. And just some of the committee comments, feedback that we received during the review of the rubric. The committee members noted the writing opportunities included, the correlation to CPALMs, the scope and sequence, some small bites with active learning, which they felt was beneficial, especially considering the integration right now of social studies into ELA. Translated dashboard in many different languages was also a very beneficial, sought-after feature by the committee. Curated photos, standards-based assessment, and it can also be linked to Focus, our student information platform. Do we have any questions before we move on to middle school? Are there any other elementary-specific questions? Okay. All right, on to middle school. Go for it.
All right. So once again, with middle school, we took a look at the rubric from the state, and we developed a rubric that we were utilizing. There are 3 parts. We have the content first, section 1, followed by the presentation and learning. These were scored on a scale of 1 to 3, 3 being the best score, and the reviewers also could make comments on in the rubric. We had a considerable number of products that we were taking a look at. We had 4 publishers that were on the state-approved list for social studies. The 5th one we already have purchased, which is Florida Transformative Education's Gateway Resources. We have those currently as a supplemental resource in 7th grade and 11th grade. So the first one was McGraw-Hill, World History. The school vote was about 50% for McGraw-Hill. And again, you'll notice that there's the no feedback was provided at my school. That's the green sliver. And the I do not represent a school was the purple. The committee member vote was also for McGraw-Hill at 62.5%. So when you factor out those people, those individuals that did not vote or did not represent a school, they secured a 75% vote.
At the school, is it only the social studies teachers or the world history teachers, or is it the entire staff that votes at the school?
It was it was a QR code, so anyone could have placed a vote, but I think the people that were informed about the QR code and looking at the materials were predominantly those social studies.
I'm just wondering, like, when you get the feedback about, I didn't review the materials, I wonder if those are some of the teachers that teach algebra or that teach intensive reading, or, do you know what I'm saying? I just was curious. I didn't know feedback was provided on my school campus. I was just curious how that
They
was.
received that.
In this particular case, it might have been, for example, a civics teacher who only reviewed civics materials.
Right.
And not world history.
And they wanted to vote, but not for this one. Right, makes sense.
You'll see that it really reflected also in the committee member vote, the green section,
Right.
because they might have only voted for the one that they were looking at. Like, if I was a civics teacher, I might really look at the civics only, yeah. Good question. Speaking of civics, the school vote for civics was 37.5 in favor of McGraw-Hill. The committee member vote was 43.8% in favor of McGraw-Hill. That combined vote with when you factor out those that did not vote or did not represent a school was 52%. United States history was next. School vote, 50% for McGraw-Hill. Committee member vote, also 50% for McGraw-Hill. Let me see. That one would have been a 73% when you factor out those that did not represent a school or did not vote, did not choose to vote.
So again, just to look at the state response in terms of subject-specific standard score, all three in terms of McGraw-Hill, all three courses did receive a 4.6 or higher, and the percentage of alignment came in at 94% or higher as well. And just from McGraw-Hill, thinking about middle school social studies, they did provide just some highlights of what basically resources teachers would have access to as well. Lots of primary and secondary courses, which again, of course, is something that our teachers seek. It's very beneficial to instruction to have those primary resources so that students can basically see firsthand what was written or spoken historically. Any questions on middle school?
I have one. Pertaining to the text, that was 50, it looked to be about 50-50 split. Was it before civics?
Let me go back, US history.
Yeah. I'm not sure the answer to this question. In regards to that, did you guys drill down to see if there was like 3 middle schools that wanted one and 4 middle schools that wanted another one? Or was the school pretty mixed in their responses? Do you know?
I think a lot of the reason that it's only 50% and it kind of looks deceiving is because there were so many options there as well. You know, since there were 4 options, like when we were looking at elementary, there were only the 2. But this, on the left-hand side is the school vote, so it
Can
looks
you go to
like.
the previous slide for me?
Yeah.
Sorry,
That'd be
I didn't mean to
civics.
interrupt you, Mrs. Dodd. I'm sorry.
At the 37.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought she was
Maybe it
talking
was that
about
one.
50, sorry.
I think I did. I was looking at the one that was pretty evenly split,
This one's-
right?
Right,
So that one seemed to have the same percentage of teachers that picked 2 different texts.
right, that's correct.
So I didn't know if there was did you guys drill into that? Was there and I'm just using my schools, did Eustis Middle School want Teachers Curriculum Institute, Civics Alive, and then Umatilla wanted McGraw-Hill? Do you guys know the split with that?
We do have the record of the votes.
Is there a way that you could accommodate that if there were schools that purchased different textbooks? And what I realize, in the unintended consequences, I know we do district curriculum maps and assessments, but if they're aligned to the standards, I don't know that we're doing PLCs in schools and planning in schools. I just wasn't sure if there was a reason that we wouldn't look into that.
Do we know what TCI's percentage of alignment and subject-specific standards are? It's going to be tough to
Right.
beat the 100% of alignment that McGraw-Hill has.
Yeah, and so 2 things. The first is from a teacher support standpoint, as you mentioned, that would be my primary concern with adopting 2 different resources. We have to put forth a recommendation, for adoption, and then if we consider the professional learning needs, we have one 6 through 12 program specialist in the district. So to be able to support all of our social studies teachers, we would want to make sure that they could all access like the same training. It would kind of split her in half in terms of having to support one publisher and then having to support the professional learning from another publisher. So just like continuity, while I think we could probably get that lift off the ground with the publisher support for year one, it would become increasingly difficult as that tends to fall off year after year in the adoption. So I think that's, I would say, historical context of how we've looked at it and always provided one recommendation.
I just didn't know if there was a reason why we wouldn't look at being open to doing second. I didn't think we did instructional material-based PD. I realize we do that when we start, that here's the book, here's the resources, here how we use those, this is year one. And then after that, to your point, it's very difficult coming back for 6 years. And I know that in the past, when we've adopted instructional materials, sometimes when there's a split like that, it just, you don't get the buy-in, and then we see teachers not using instructional materials. And I just wondered if the school is the one that's providing the support for the instructional materials, and if the professional development is around standards-based instruction and PLCs and planning at a school-based level. I just didn't know if that was a shift that we were considering even as a district. So I just thought I would ask. I know in my experience, when I nationally consult, I don't do textbook-specific instruction. I do standards-based instruction, so I just didn't know.
I do have the alignment too, if that's helpful for the TCI. It was a 4.0 and then 85%.
Yeah.
Well, we have an elementary one that's 84%, if I remember correct, so. And I don't think any
And-
textbook is perfect, but.
Yeah, and there is a lot of professional learning that is curriculum specific to the textbook. Obviously, it's going to focus on standards alignment, but it is going to dig into the resources that are provided. And another component of that would be our professional learning communities at the district level in terms of professional learning community training. If we're looking at a subject specific, let's say we're looking at a professional learning community digging into identifying essential standards, we're also going to want to pull in the curriculum resources that are provided to plan for the instruction. So we might have schools represented from across the district at that training. So as they're collaborating, we would want them to be able to identify and utilize the same resource in order to plan those next steps for instruction.
I hear you saying no. Thank you for the discussion.
You're welcome.
Right. Now for high school, are we ready to move on? Okay, high school, we had the same four that we were taking a look at. We utilized the same rubric that we just reviewed for middle school. The high school vote went towards TCI, Teacher Curriculum Institute. The school vote, this is for world history first, we're going to start with that. School vote was 25% for TCI. It was kind of a three-way split there. The committee member vote, though, was strongly in favor of the TCI with 41.7%. That gave us a total of 44% of the vote, when you factor out those that did not review the materials or did not choose to vote. United States history recommendation was also TCI. The school vote was at 33.3%. The committee member vote was at 33.3%. That was a 47% of the vote that they secured when you factor out those that did not review the materials. Economics would be next.
Kelly, I'm sorry, can you go back one?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you explain that last part to me one more time? How does one, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at it close enough with the purple being that I did not review. Sorry, go ahead.
That was a big, and again, I think this, yeah, it goes back to what Christy was talking about with secondary, where a lot of times they're looking specifically at the course that they're teaching.
I was thinking both the green and purple were two different curriculums, and then if those were
Oh,
both
yes.
equal,
Right.
how could it shift it?
Yeah.
My fault.
No, a good question. Economics was next. Economics, we had also TCI, with TCI here had, it changed colors on us just to throw us off, 41.7%. Committee member vote was also 41.7%. Once again, you have a big chunk there that did not review the materials. When you factor those out, TCI secured 63% of the vote. United States government, the school vote, United States government, let's find it. There it is, green again. 16.7%. Committee member vote was 33.3%. That's 35% of the vote. E-dynamic, this is for Psychology 1, Personal Psychology 1 recommendations. E-dynamic was the one that we looked at. We looked at 1 because this was the only one on the state list when we began to review the materials. The school vote was 25% in favor of E-dynamic. That, with that giant chunk right there, did not represent a school. And the committee member vote was also E-dynamic with 16.7%. The E-dynamic learning was 56% of the vote when you factor out those pretty sizable chunks of individuals that did not vote.
In this case, you had 16.7% that reviewed and did not recommend adoption. And if you only had one to look at,
So what would be the choice? Have no book?
no, but there isn't but one?
There was one.
One on
One
the state
state
list.
approved.
Yeah.
That's retarded.
Yes, sir.
So we could run the risk of going off the state list in psychology?
On psychology. Which is
Okay.
where,
Sounds hungry when you say that out loud, doesn't it?
all right, so speaking to the TCI alignment, you'll see those subject-specific standard scores again at a 4.0 or higher. And then you'll probably note right off the bat the percentage of alignment there with government at a 64.1%, which was a little bit of an outlier. So I'd like to provide some context on that. This comes again from the state review process. So in the initial review, by 2 Florida state reviewers, one of the reviewers only rated the student text alignment and not the actual entirety of the program, and that happens. So TCI then supplied that reviewer with all of the activities, the teacher presentations, and the additional student text pages to demonstrate the alignment. So what happens at that point is, they also made some content changes based on the feedback that was provided, and after the second review of the program, they actually came back with a 100% alignment rating. But of course, when the original documentation is released, it stays with that original reference point of the 64.1%. So it doesn't include any of the changes or corrections that were made by the publisher to reflect the increased alignment. So
To
that's.
be clear, it
yes.
now meets 100% of
Yes.
state standard.
Yes, we do not, yes. We actually communicated with, to find out more a little bit on this one. But again, another key piece to this is looking at the feedback from our teachers, our district teachers here in Lake, to see if that was something that would arise as a concern on their part in terms of not meeting standards alignment. And it was not a concern by our district reviewers.
And we're going to purchase, or all those resources are part of the package that we're expected to receive for this, right? So the teachers won't have missing gaps in their alignment.
That's correct.
Yes. Yeah, and just to highlight some of the offerings from TCI at the high school level, there, again, you see their benchmark alignment, the engaging all learners, supporting all learners, certainly inquiry projects and more at the high school level is something that's very critical to the work and to instruction. And they offer, and of course, test prep as well, and teacher support. So making sure that there's some self-paced professional development, especially as we onboard and prepare for launch. That was important to the teachers.
Those inquiry projects, are those similar to like a DBQ type project?
Yeah, Christy,
Looking
can
at-
Yes.
Kind of thinking. I just know we did a lot of that when I was in school, and those were always helpful, the DBQ side, and the
Yes.
inquiry
Yeah.
project sounded similar. looking
in
at the
some way,
description.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe not a DBQ per se,
Sure.
but
Similar
but
idea.
similar.
Yeah.
Overall feedback on TCI from the committee, the extra documents, so students have research material. The PowerPoints was another highlight, just in terms of having resources for new teachers to be able to have some basically scripted reference points to be able to deliver instruction. We know that sometimes the lift is really heavy as we're embarking on a new curriculum, so being able to have that continuity and consistency of implementation with a PowerPoint, if there's a new teacher or if we have a sub in a classroom could prove beneficial. That was the feedback from the group. The Great Teacher Guide, strengths in the unit, activities where all work is geared towards activities that students can relate to, really thinking about that relevance for students. All right, so transitioning to advanced placement. Again, this was led by Kathleen Daniels with College and Career. So with AP, they use the College Board's recommended list as their source for the district review. Then they contact the vendors for samples, and the teachers get together to review those samples, similar to our approach in CIA. They also had a vendor showcase where the vendors demonstrated the materials to the teachers. And they asked teachers if there were any other materials that they wanted to be considered as part of the adoption, obviously, since there's flexibility within the college courses.
Okay. When we take a look at the rubric that they use the College Board language for not aligned, somewhat aligned, and aligned. So we're looking for the aligned component, which would have been a 3. They also utilized the course exam descriptions and scoring materials. This is what their rubric looked like. The first section was the content, followed by presentation, learning, digital platform. These were the 4 parts of it, and these are the materials that they reviewed. They had 5 materials, 5 different publishers, selected from the College Board recommendation list of materials. The first graph that we're going to show is BFW. If you'll notice that unanimously, all of the committee members voted for BFW for the AP comparative course. Perfection Learning secured unanimously all of the votes for AP Human, AP World, AP History, AP European, AP Government, AP Macro. So you might notice that we have some blank graphs on the screen as well with Cengage, McGraw-Hill, and Sabas. That's because they did not receive any of the votes for those materials.
So these are all of the recommendations: Perfect Learning, AMSCO, AP Human Geo, AP World History, AP US History, AP European History, AP Government, AP Economics. Any questions on the advanced placement recommendation? Okay. And BFW Publishers Comparative Government recommendation.
Do we not do different adoptions for IB or ACE? Those are included in some of the textbooks we looked at earlier.
They're not in this adoption cycle.
Okay.
I also wanted to mention that Perfection Learning did not offer the materials for that AP comparative. And that's probably a good, that also kind of speaks to the BFW choice there for that one.
So, the fun part, fiscal impact, thinking about the estimated budget allocation required for this adoption. We're going to walk you through, we broke it down just to kind of parse it out by grade band. First, with the K-5 Gallopade recommendation, with the inclusion of printed student editions for 5 years, print teacher edition, teaching tools binder, curated content, image pack, and digital licenses, and 1 digital teacher license for that 5-year term. We estimate the cost to be $1,065,416.50. For the 6 through 8 adoption for McGraw-Hill, which includes the 5-year print digital bundle, plus the Study Smart Access and print and digital teacher editions. This would be the print editions for all students. You can see the $1,213,200 there. Social Studies 9 through 12, TCI, including the 5-year teacher and student digital licenses, the print teacher's guides, placards, government test prep book, and the reproducible pages, as well as your student textbooks at a 1-to-1 ratio, $1,889,550. Psych 1, we pulled out separately that because it is a separate publisher, it includes the student and teacher digital licenses at $135,900. And again, these are estimates at this time, based on enrollment and enrollment projections. And then the advanced placement budget needed, this would include your teachers' additions, student additions, online access at $337,205.02. With an estimated cost of $4,641,271.52. But I do want, it's really important to note the carryover. We obviously were in a position where we did not have an adoption this year. We went through the adoption process this year for social studies, aiming for next year. Last year, we did not adopt materials for implementation this year. The reason for that, of course, being the rationale that we wanted to wait for the state-approved list to be released prior to going into the adoption. We know that we kind of encountered some hiccups with our math adoption, waiting on the state release of approved materials. So we wanted to avoid that moving forward. So therefore, we've maintained a carryover balance of what you see there, over $3,800,000. So that would move towards the cost of the social studies adoption for next year. And we do have some gap year and subscription projections, just in terms of some of the courses where we're in a gap year. They're kind of like, I would say, some one-off courses that we do have to provide instructional materials for, and we estimate that to be at about $570,000. So we just wanted to be transparent there, that would be a cost necessary for next year.
Can you
And-
explain what that is? What do
Yeah,
you mean, a course?
absolutely.
Absolutely. So some of the things that are included in that are like, we have Fun Hub subscription through Wit and Wisdom and Foundations. We have sign language at one of our high schools that we offer, which are digital license each year. Discovery Education, we're going to be in gap year next year for science, which means that we have to purchase all those digital licenses as a part of gap year. So we're going to have to pay for those next
So
year.
that's not necessarily associated with the social studies adoption, it's just
No.
additional instructional material cost.
Right.
Correct.
We just know that we needed to budget for those
Got it.
for gap year.
Thank you.
And we wanted to be transparent that was a cost we would expect for next year.
Right.
Anything else on that list? Kelly, we good?
I don't think so.
Okay. And then college and career readiness, the department funding would be $337,205.02 in order to cover the advanced placement cost for the budget there, with an estimated final cost at just a little over $1 million.
We've got the benefit on the carry forward because of not having an adoption this year. Next year, we have an adoption though, right?
Yes, science.
Okay. And so I guess I'm just kind of, so this will deplete our carryover?
Yes, sir.
So I guess, budget band room? No. I'm just wondering, thinking down the road, if science costs a few $1 million, that probably exceeds our instructional materials allotment, right? We have funding for that?
Yeah, it typically does. We typically have to put some extra in.
Or
We're-
some magic or pull the general funding, supplemental sort of things?
We typically do.
Okay, all right.
So to build off that, on these materials, the year, to make sure I understand this right, the year one cost is the $1,040,000, then year 2, year 3, year 4 is gonna be back up to that 4.6, or is that all in for like the 5 years?
5 years.
Cool, okay.
Good question.
And when would we anticipate adoption for ACE and IB and?
As the courses come open. So I'm not sure which courses we're writing next year, to be honest, but as those courses come open, those end up on a board agenda for you all to consider.
And I know you've got your, like, when looking at this, obviously the College and Career Department funding match, the AP, we would anticipate that will happen in those programs as well, right?
And on the psychology and social studies, are those for 5 years or just for an annual 1 year? The top three just say 5 year, 5 year, 5 year.
For psychology, you asked?
Yeah, so the
Yes.
135,000,
Yes, sir. That's for 5 years as well.
thank you.
Good question. All right, and just to to kind of take us back to the overall timeline, we are at, obviously, the February 22nd school board hearing. We've had the recommended materials available for public review since February 1st through the 21st. Our next step is the school board voting at the upcoming meeting on February 26th, followed by an objection period from March 1st to March 31st, where our community can file an objection to the selection of the district adopted instructional materials. And then on April 1st, Kelly has the joy of submitting our state instructional material certifications with the instructional materials that we'll be using. So we are right on time here. I did also just want to acknowledge the community members who took their time to participate this year. That was new, and we were so thankful to have just their voices and their input, their feedback, and to welcome them as a part of the team. They've really added a lot to the group and just pushed our thinking a little bit. So we were very fortunate to have them participate as well.
It was fantastic, along with those parents that were involved.
Yes.
And we're also very, I think, blessed to have the publishers in the room today. We appreciate you guys making it for this hearing, so thank you.
Can I ask a question about the objection period? So you have a month period that anybody can provide an objection.
Right.
So if we get an objection, then what's the process to that?
We would share that objection with the school board, and we would take a look at that objection and evaluate that and take a look at, and possibly reach out to that person, meet with that person, and have a recommendation there, so.
There's a process.
There's a process
in
for
place
that.
for an objection.
So
we
if
would
that
follow.
objection, let's say, comes in on March 31st, right at the end, and we've got our certification due April 1st, do we still submit that certification while we resolve that objection, or does that buy us time on the certification, or?
Yeah, I would
have a
imagine.
statutory date, right?
I would imagine that we'd have to still submit with kind of a caveat, but we would reach out
can-
to our state instructional materials representative and let them know the situation that we're in at that time.
And I'm sure we could submit a revision if needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
I just got a question on the timeline to be able to receive these materials so your folks can get to work on blueprint work and that sort of thing. Are these publishers amenable to providing some advanced copies to these people to begin their work, or do they have to wait till summer, or what happens? Only digital access or print, or? I just remember when I did that work, it was a lot easier having the physical copy versus online.
Absolutely, yes. So the sooner we order the materials, the sooner that we have access to those typically, but they will have, as far as I know, they will have access to the digital materials over summer until those print materials come in.
As soon as we have a go, it's usually
So I see all the publishers in the room. So let me just give my little plea here. It's been a while since I did this, but back when I was teaching, it was really helpful when I had that physical copy there for
Right.
curriculum blueprinting and mapping versus jumping around online. It's just not the same. When you want to dog your pages and flip through and go back here and there. So
And I
anything
know-
y'all can do, we really appreciate it.
We can get you samples relevant.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm Deanna with TCI. Thank you all for having that. We have no problem getting, we're all teachers, Curriculum
Right.
Institute. Every teacher that comes to professional development will walk out the door with a print copy of teacher and student materials while they're waiting for the school book depository to deliver the materials. So not a problem at all.
All are great. Thank
I can
you.
only speak for me.
Sure.
obviously.
All right.
Yeah, and same for McGraw-Hill. So I'm Lauren with McGraw-Hill, and I live right here, so I'm very close.
All right.
And I've already given some samples to Christy to have on hand.
Oh, great.
But of course, if that doesn't cover how many we need to do that planning strategically to get the curriculum maps, I know, like you mentioned, it is intensive work,
It
and
is.
you want to do that and have it set before the school year even begins. So.
Great. Thank you.
I should also mention that I know that when those materials were available on the school campuses, they were scooped up. So we do have, we do have those materials on the school campuses already, the samples.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this the public hearing part, Superintendent? Do I need to open it up?
It is a required public hearing, so I would recommend that you open it up for anyone who'd like to speak to the recommendations, and
Will do. So, like she said, this is a public hearing. It is open for comments from the public. If anyone is here to comment on it, please feel free to come forward now. Seeing none, I find it appropriate to close the public hearing. All right, so that is item 3.01. Do we have any other topics today, Superintendent?
We do not. Just a reminder that the recommendation for final approval will be on Monday's agenda.
Perfect. All right, seeing no other topics, board member comments. Mr. Mathias?
Good.
Mr. Dodd? Ms. Luke?
No.
Of course, I've got a couple. And I wonder who they're about. Leesburg High School, weightlifting won state titles earlier this week in both traditional and Olympic. The girls' basketball team is in the regional finals tonight in Tampa, and the boys are in the regional finals tomorrow night in Tampa. So an exciting week all around. Hopefully Monday night I'll have some updates on those regional games, but things continue to move forward there. So another proud day. Superintendent comments?
I just want to thank the CIA staff and our college and career readiness team, along with all those who served on these committees. I know it was a lot of work and a lot of thoughtful work, and I just appreciate the amount of time that was given on behalf of all of our teachers. And I know the board and all of us across Lake County continue to keep our teacher, Lauren Cullis, in our thoughts and prayers, and just wanted to mention her today.
Any objection to adjourning? All right, we are adjourned.